Welcome to the Kids Bedtime Stories channel. If you enjoy our stories, don't forget to subscribe. You are listening to a tale from the series Millie and the Ribbon Bridge. This is episode 2, Cloudstep Ridge. Wrap yourself comfortably. Take a slow, peaceful breath and journey with Millie into a new realm. Let us begin. The cooler gust of wind Millie had felt as she left. Whispering Leaflands grew stronger with every step. At first, it had been only a gentle brush against her cheek. Now it was guiding her forward. The trees began to thin, and the soft earth beneath her feet gave way to pale, solid stone. The rocks were smooth, cool, and uneven, as though wind and water had been shaping them for a very long time. The path began to climb, at first gently, then more steeply. Millie leaned slightly forward to keep her balance. Each step required more effort than the last. Small stones shifted beneath her boots, and the air felt cooler and somehow lighter. She paused to catch her breath. Looking down, she saw that the leafy realm was already far below. The green canopy now resembled a soft carpet spread between the trees. Ahead of her rose a rocky ridge, bright, bare, open to the sky. The wind blew more briskly, as though testing whether Millie would truly make it to the top. Millie smiled faintly. "We'll get there," she murmured to herself. The bracelet with the first knot pulsed calmly at her wrist. The warmth of the woven leaf steadied her. She climbed higher and higher still, until at last she reached the summit. The ground ended. Before her stretched a wide crack in the rock. It was not terribly deep, but far too wide to leap across, and above it hovered clouds. Not high overhead, not far away. Right above the ridge, low, soft, gently trembling. Millie stepped carefully closer to the edge. The cloud nearest the cliff quivered slightly, as if it sensed her presence. Millie reached out and touched it carefully. Soft, springy, warm. It was not damp like fog, nor cool like mist. It felt more like a vast cushion made of air, but it floated above the gap. Millie glanced down, then back at the cloud. "I suppose this isn't an ordinary path," she whispered. The wind answered with a short, playful whistle. The cloud shifted a few inches, then drifted back, as though hesitating. Millie swallowed. "Well, I did climb all the way up here." She placed one foot onto the cloud. It dipped under her weight. Millie quickly pulled her foot back. Her heart beat faster. Easy. She looked at her bracelet. The woven leaf pulsed warmly. She took a deep breath. This time, she stepped onto the cloud more firmly. It sank slightly, but held. Millie shifted her weight. She placed her other foot carefully beside the first. The cloud rippled. The wind blew stronger. Millie stretched out her arms to keep her balance. And then, the cloud moved. At first, slowly, then faster. "Oh," Millie whispered. Instead of drifting straight ahead, the cloud veered slightly to the side. The wind whistled as though pleased with itself. "Hey, I'm just trying to cross," Millie called. At that very moment, something swirled above her head. A small cloud looped through the air, then another loop, then it descended like a soft elevator. From its center sprang a figure. "Oh, a visitor!" the figure exclaimed brightly. "Oh, wait, that's not quite the proper greeting. Hold on, because this cloud sometimes..." Her foot caught in one of her own drifting layers. She spun in mid-air, and instead of falling, she began to float. Well, that works too." Millie stared with wide eyes, trying to keep her balance at the same time. The figure had hair as bright as the morning sky and a dress made of layered, translucent clouds. Every now and then, one layer drifted loose, and she had to grab it and press it back into place. "You jumped out of a cloud," Millie said in disbelief. "Yes, sometimes sideways, sometimes upward, and sometimes, oh dear." A gust of wind spun her gently. "You see, he does that on purpose." The figure clapped her hands. "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I am the Cloudstep Fairy, guardian of Cloudstep Ridge, and you are someone very brave to have climbed all the way up here." Millie tried to answer, but her cloud surged forward again. I'm Millie." "Millie," the Cloudstep Fairy repeated. "That sounds like two little gusts of wind. Millie." She twirled twice in the air. The wind responded with a stronger whistle. The clouds began to spin faster. Too fast. The Cloudstep Fairy suddenly froze mid-air. "Oh, no." The cloud path before them began to fall apart. One cloud drifted away. Another turned sideways. A third bounced upward like a startled puff of cotton. "I've done it again," the fairy groaned. "When I get nervous, the wind becomes overly enthusiastic." Millie tightened her fingers around her bracelet. The wind whistled more sharply, and the clouds refused to stay still. The cloud beneath Millie's feet trembled more sharply. It did not fall. It did not disappear. But it refused to stay still. One moment, it slid to the right. The next, to the left. Then it bounced gently as if someone were tickling it from below. Millie tried to keep her balance. "Are they always this lively?" she asked, doing her best not to topple over. The Cloudstep Fairy hovered a few inches above the rock, trying to press down the small spinning cloudlets swirling around her. "Only when I get nervous," she replied quickly. "And I get nervous when the clouds run away, and the clouds run away when I get nervous. So it's a bit of a, circle." She traced a circle in the air with her hands. At that exact moment, the wind traced a larger circle above the ridge. Millie looked ahead. The cloud path that had led across the rocky gap was almost completely broken apart. One cloud had drifted too far away. Another had flipped sideways like a pillow, tossed onto a bed. A third was spinning in place. "Maybe we need to catch them," Millie suggested. "I tried that," the Cloudstep Fairy cried, and immediately leapt into the air. She grabbed one of the escaping clouds. The cloud stretched like spun sugar. "Oh dear!" The fairy tugged, trying to pull it back. The wind blew harder. The cloud slipped from her hands. The Cloudstep Fairy spun midair and landed backwards. Fortunately, on her own cloud. "You see? You see?" she said, straightening the drifting layer at her shoulder. "The more I try, the more they run away." Millie glanced down at her own cloud. She decided to try carefully. She took a small step toward the nearest floating cloudlet and reached out her hand. "Hey, stay for a moment." The little cloud quivered. For a second, it paused. Hope flickered inside Millie, but then a sideways gust swept past, and the cloud slid away again. Millie frowned. "Maybe we need to move faster." She tried taking a few quicker steps. The cloud beneath her sped up. Then it turned sharply. Millie wobbled. "Careful," cried the Cloudstep Fairy. Millie windmilled her arms. She managed not to fall, but her heart thudded faster. The wind laughed in a whistling rush. The clouds spun even more quickly. "That's not working," Millie said, trying to steady herself. The Cloudstep Fairy had floated higher than before. When she was nervous, she barely touched the ground at all. I know it's not working," she answered quickly. "I've tried speaking to them very firmly, and very kindly, and very quickly, and very slowly, and suddenly one of the clouds bounced up and nudged her lightly in the back. Oh, you see, they don't listen to me." Millie looked down at her bracelet. The woven leaf of the listening knot pulsed steadily, completely different from the restless movement all around them. She remembered how, in Whispering Leaflands, the path had disappeared whenever she hurried. She looked up at the Cloudstep Fairy. "What if, for just a moment, you stop trying to catch them. The fairy blinked, stopped, but then they'll drift away completely. One cloud did, in fact, drift farther off. Millie felt she had to try something different. What if we don't try to stop them, but first try to stop ourselves? The Cloudstep Fairy rotated slightly in mid-air. Stop ourselves? The wind blew harder, as if it disliked the sound of that sentence. Millie tried to stand more firmly on her cloud. When everything in Leaflands was whispering at once, it helped when I stopped speaking first. The Cloudstep Fairy fell quiet for a moment. The clouds were still spinning, but for one brief second, their movement seemed slightly less wild. I'm not very good at standing still, the fairy admitted, rising another few inches into the air. Even when I try to stand still, oh dear, you see? Her legs were moving as if dancing without music. Millie smiled faintly. Then maybe we won't stand still, but we can try to breathe. The Cloudstep Fairy furrowed her brow. Breathe! At that moment, a stronger gust swept across the ridge. The cloud beneath Millie rippled so violently that she had to drop to her knees to avoid falling. The wind was not angry. It was overly energetic, like someone talking far too much at once. Millie felt that if she hurried now, everything would only speed up even more. She lifted her gaze to the Cloudstep Fairy. Try with me, she said calmly. The fairy looked at her uncertainly. The clouds swirled. The path had nearly vanished. The wind whistled louder and louder. Millie took a slow, steady breath. She did not yet know whether it would be enough, but she knew that chasing the clouds was not the answer. The clouds were still spinning. The wind whistled over the ridge, slipping between the rocks and curling itself around the Cloudstep Fairy's gown. Millie knelt on her cloud to steady herself more easily. Try with me, she repeated calmly. The Cloudstep Fairy hovered a few inches above the ground, her legs moving of their own accord. I truly don't know how to stand still, she said quickly. I mean, I try, but then something lifts me, or the wind turns me, or a cloud tickles my feet. At that very moment, a small cloud puff bounced beneath her foot. You see? Millie smiled faintly. It doesn't have to be standing, just one calm breath. The wind blew more sharply, as if trying to drown out her words. Millie closed her eyes. She took a slow breath in. The cloud beneath her still rippled, but she did not try to control it. She simply breathed. Inhale, exhale. The Cloudstep Fairy looked at her uncertainly. Just like that? She asked. Just like that? The fairy tried. She took a quick breath. Too quick. The wind reacted instantly and spun around her. "Not so fast," Millie said gently. "Slowly." The Cloudstep Fairy narrowed her eyes as if this were the most difficult task she had ever faced. She inhaled, this time slower. Her feet lowered slightly. The wind hesitated, as if unsure whether it should keep racing. Millie took another steady breath. "One gust," she said softly. The wind answered with a shorter whistle, softer than before. "Now a second." The Cloudstep Fairy took a second calm breath. The clouds that had been spinning began to move less wildly. They did not stop completely, but they no longer fled in every direction. "Oh," the fairy whispered. They're slowing down." Millie opened her eyes. It was true. The cloud beneath her now swayed gently, like something floating on calm water. The wind was still there, but it was no longer rushing. It was breathing. Millie rose slowly to her feet. "One more," she said. The Cloudstep Fairy nodded. This time, her inhale was truly steady. Her gown stopped swirling. The small cloudlets no longer drifted away. The wind moved across the ridge in a long, soft hush. The clouds aligned, one after another, forming a path. At that very moment, Millie felt warmth at her wrist. The story string stirred more strongly than before, not gently like leaves, but dynamically, as though a small spiral were turning within it. The fibers began to weave faster than they had the first time. Light flowed along them in a spiral. It turned and gathered in one place. A soft, clear sound followed, as if the air itself had settled into perfect rhythm. Millie looked at her bracelet. Beside the leaf-shaped weave, a new knot had formed. It did not resemble an ordinary tie. It looked like a small spiral of cloud enclosed in a rounded shape. Within it, subtle light moved, not racing, but circling peacefully. "The calm knot," whispered the Cloudstep Fairy in wonder. Millie touched the new weave. The warmth felt different from before, not only soft, but steady, as if someone had placed a small piece of tranquil sky in her palm. The Cloudstep Fairy lowered onto her own cloud. This time, she was not floating. She stood, truly stood. I can feel the ground," she said in amazement. "It's so extraordinary." Millie smiled. "Sometimes you don't have to stop the wind. You only need to give it a rhythm." The Cloudstep Fairy gazed at her with wide eyes. "Could you stay here forever?" Millie laughed softly. "I think I still have a few more realms to visit." The fairy clapped her hands, gently this time. The clouds arranged themselves into a stable path leading to the other side of the ridge. "Now you can cross without dancing," she said proudly. Millie stepped onto the first cloud. It did not flee. It did not twist. It simply hovered calmly. On the horizon, another shape appeared. Not soft, not light, heavier, denser, mist. But not like the clouds. It lingered closer to the ground, quieter, and it seemed to reflect the light. Millie glanced at her bracelet. 2 knots pulsed side by side, the leaf and the spiral, listening and calm. She felt a new balance within herself. Behind her, the Cloudstep Fairy waved energetically. "If the wind starts dancing again, I'll practice breathing," she called. Millie waved back and walked toward the mist. This was the second part of the series Millie and the Ribbon Bridge. In the next episode, Millie will arrive in a realm where the mist reflects more than just a face. Will she learn another knot? We will discover that in the next chapter. Thank you for listening to Kids Bedtime Stories. If you enjoy our stories, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, good night.